Welcome to Void Case Files. I'm your host, and tonight we're diving into declassified police documents that reveal an investigation unlike any other. What began as a routine domestic disturbance call in Southington, Connecticut escalated into what's known as the Elizabeth Blanchard Exorcism. But the evidence collected that night pointed not to demonic possession, but to something far more alien and chilling. Detectives were left with inexplicable residue, witness testimony that defied logic, and a cosmic horror that transcended human understanding. What truly happened in that house on October 14th, 2019? Before we begin, if you're fascinated by the unexplained and the cases that never made it to mainstream media, hit that subscribe button. We're on a mission to reach 10,000 subscribers by the end of 2026, and we're posting daily videos to bring you the most disturbing case files from the void. Your support helps us continue uncovering these stories. Now, let's dive in. October 14th, 2019, 9:47 p.m. The 911 call that came into Hartford County Dispatch that night still makes seasoned operators uncomfortable. Thomas Blanchard's voice was barely recognizable, strangled by panic and something else, something that sounded like he'd been screaming for hours. The address he gave was 208 Meriden Avenue in Southington, a quiet bedroom community where the biggest crime is usually stolen packages from front porches. His wife Elizabeth had locked herself in their bedroom 3 days ago, and according to Thomas, she wasn't his wife anymore. In the background of that call, you can hear her. Not screaming exactly, but making sounds that the dispatcher later described as wrong, like someone imitating human speech without understanding how it works. There were multiple voices layered over each other, creating a discordant harmony that made your skin crawl. Thomas was begging someone to stop, but the responses he got back sounded like words filtered through radio static. Officer Daniel Wright and Officer Lena Cortez pulled up to the white duplex at 10:13 p.m., expecting a mental health crisis or maybe a bad drug reaction. What they found was an entire neighborhood that hadn't slept properly in 3 days. Before they even killed the engine, neighbors were rushing toward their patrol car with the desperate energy of people who'd been holding on to something terrible and finally had someone to tell. Margaret Hayes from next door looked a decade older than her driver's license photo. She'd been timing the lights coming from the Blanchard's bedroom window because she couldn't sleep through them. Every 47 seconds for the past 72 hours, prismatic light would pulse against her bedroom wall, shifting colors like oil on water. She showed Officer Wright her phone where she'd been keeping a log. 47 seconds. Never 46, never 48. Always 47. Robert Tillman from across the street had seen Elizabeth standing in that window at 3 in the morning the night before. He'd been getting a glass of water when car headlights swept across the Blanchard house, and for just a moment he saw her, perfectly motionless like a mannequin, but when the light hit her eyes, they reflected it back the way an animal's eyes do, bright and unnatural. He hadn't slept since. Then there was the sound. Multiple neighbors mentioned it unprompted, this low-frequency hum that you felt in your chest more than heard with your ears. One neighbor who worked in audio engineering had actually measured it at 13.7 hertz, right at the edge of human perception. People 3 houses down on either side were getting headaches that wouldn't respond to medication. 2 had experienced spontaneous nosebleeds. One woman's dog wouldn't enter her backyard anymore, just stood at the door and whined. Wright and Cortez approached the house, and even from the sidewalk they heard something that shouldn't exist. It was like wind chimes made of glass mixed with radio interference, a crystalline static that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. Wright's first thought was that someone had left a television on between channels, but the sound was too organic for that, too alive. Thomas Blanchard met them on the lawn with blood running down both arms from deep cuts across his palms. Elizabeth had thrown a mirror at him through the bedroom door, he said, but it was his eyes that Officer Cortez remembered most clearly when she gave her statement later. They were the eyes of someone who'd looked at something that shattered his entire understanding of the world, and now he was trying to function with the pieces. His statement came out in fragments. Elizabeth had stopped sleeping 4 nights ago. Not restless sleep or insomnia, but completely stopped. She stood in the bedroom or wrote on the walls or spoke in voices that didn't belong to her. When she talked, It sounded like multiple radio stations broadcasting simultaneously, all different voices forming words that somehow made terrible sense. She'd become obsessed with listening to the sky, drawing spiral symbols everywhere she could reach, on the walls with Sharpie, on mirrors with lipstick, on their bedsheets in her own blood. The symbols looked like radio telescope arrays or spiral galaxies, arms reaching outward into nothing. She'd been writing coordinates on her skin. Thomas showed them her arms in a photo, covered in numbers written in permanent marker, layered so thick you could barely see flesh underneath. He didn't know what the numbers meant, but Elizabeth had a PhD in astrophysics from Yale. She knew exactly what she was writing. The officers tried the front door. Unlocked. The house was neat, normal, suburban. Family photos on the walls, dishes in the drying rack. But the bedroom door at the end of the hall was a different story. Locked from inside and behind it, rhythmic banging like someone throwing themselves against the walls, and that sound, that impossible crystalline static, was coming from inside. Wright's body camera captured something crucial. Every time he or Cortez got within 10 feet of that door, their equipment went haywire. Video feed developed snow, audio turned to white noise. Wright checked his gear, ran diagnostics. Everything read normal, but the interference kept building the closer they approached. It was like the room itself was generating some kind of field that their equipment couldn't process. While they waited for backup, Thomas told them about his wife. Brilliant, dedicated, a researcher studying fast radio bursts at Yale. She'd spent the last month at the Very Large Array in New Mexico, one of the world's most powerful radio telescopes. 27 massive dish antennas spread across the desert, all working in concert to listen to the cosmos. Her dissertation focused on these mysterious bursts of radio energy from deep space, millisecond-long flashes so bright they outshine entire galaxies. Scientists discovered them in 2007 and still don't fully understand what causes them. When Elizabeth came back from New Mexico, something was different. Thomas couldn't articulate what exactly, just that the woman who returned wasn't quite the same as the one who'd left. She stopped discussing her research, stopped eating anything solid, just drank water. She filled 7 notebooks cover to cover with coordinates and symbols that looked like star charts Thomas had never seen. 3 days ago, she locked herself in the bedroom and refused to come out. The photo Thomas showed them was striking. Elizabeth 3 months earlier, vibrant and smiling at a colleague's wedding. Then one from that morning, gaunt and pale with eyes so dilated you could barely see any colour. Just black pupils reflecting the camera flash. Detective Raymond Porter arrived at 11:34 p.m. with crisis negotiation training and 20 years of talking people down from ledges both literal and metaphorical. He'd handled psychotic breaks, manic episodes, people high on bath salts who thought they were being chased by demons. He was confident he could resolve this peacefully. He approached the bedroom door and began the standard protocol, identifying himself, asking Elizabeth to communicate, offering help. No verbal response came back, but the humming intensified. That 13.7 hertz vibration that you felt in your bones suddenly got louder, deeper, until Porter could feel his molars aching from it. After 15 minutes of one-sided conversation, hearing sounds from inside that suggested self-harm, the team decided they had no choice but to breach. As they prepared the battering ram, every electronic device within 20 feet simultaneously malfunctioned. Cell phones reset themselves to factory settings. Body cameras flickered and died. One officer's wristwatch stopped at 11:47 p.m. and never worked again, frozen at that exact moment like time itself had hiccuped. The audio interference on the few cameras still recording created sounds that resembled Morse code, though later analysis found no actual message, just noise that your brain wanted to interpret as communication. The first attempt to breach failed completely. The door was standard hollow-core wood, the kind you can punch through in a domestic dispute, but it held like reinforced steel. They examined the frame for boards, brackets, anything that would explain the resistance. Nothing, just a normal bedroom door that refused to open. The second attempt succeeded at 11:52 p.m. with a crack like a gunshot, and what they found inside would haunt every responding officer for the rest of their careers. Elizabeth Blanchard stood barefoot in the centre of the room wearing torn pyjamas, her body a canvas of symbols, not drawn on but carved into her skin, shallow cuts forming spirals and coordinates, filled with blood mixed with black ink. The room was 34 degrees Fahrenheit, according to the thermometer they'd brought. Their breath misted in the air despite it being mid-October with all the windows closed. Frost had formed delicate patterns on the inside of the glass. She didn't respond to their presence, didn't acknowledge the commands to get on the ground. Her eyes were completely black, pupils dilated so far that no iris remained visible, staring at the ceiling as if watching something move across it. Something only she could see. Every mirror in the room had been shattered, but not in anger. The glass was arranged in 7 perfect concentric circles around her feet, and when they counted later from crime scene photos, each circle contained exactly 47 pieces. The precision was inhuman. The walls were covered floor to ceiling in writing, coordinates that looked astronomical, equations using symbols that didn't appear in any standard system, and phrases repeated in different languages. They showed me the in-between. The threshold is open. We are receivers. Some of it was in English, some in Latin, some in characters that looked ancient and wrong. Officer Cortez's body camera was one of the few still functioning, and it picked up the audio that would later be analysed by specialists at the University of Connecticut. Elizabeth was speaking, but calling it speaking was inadequate. It was a chorus, multiple voices in perfect disharmonious harmony, creating sounds that couldn't come from a single human throat. Later analysis would show frequencies ranging from 80 Hz to 14,000 Hz simultaneously, well beyond what human vocal cords can produce. Some of the frequencies matched signatures from documented fast radio bursts. When they approached her, Elizabeth's head turned with mechanical smoothness, too controlled, like a camera on a motorized mount. Her eyes focused on them, and every officer present later reported feeling examined, scanned, studied by something looking out through her face. Then she began seizing, but the seizures were rhythmic, pulsing every 47 seconds like a metronome. This wasn't random brain misfiring. This was coordinated. Paramedics arrived and tried to stabilize her, but Elizabeth displayed strength that physics didn't allow. 4 grown officers struggled to restrain her 118-pound frame, while she fought with force that required muscle mass she simply didn't possess. During the restraint, something happened that officers struggled to articulate in their reports without sounding insane. Her skin felt wrong. Cold, yes, but also pliable in a way that suggested the tissue beneath had changed density. One officer described it as pressing on memory foam covered in human skin. Paramedic Kyle Henderson checked her vitals and saw numbers that contradicted consciousness itself. Heart rate at 180 beats per minute, blood pressure at 60/40, body temperature at 89 degrees. These weren't numbers compatible with being awake, let alone engaging in physical struggle. Her pupils showed no reaction to light. Detective Porter recognized some of the coordinates written on the walls. His hobby was amateur astronomy, and those numbers were familiar. Right ascension, 20 hours 41 minutes. Declination, plus 45 degrees. 16 arc minutes, 9 arc seconds. Back at the station, he confirmed his suspicion. Cygnus X-1, a black hole 6,070 light-years from Earth, one of the most powerful X-ray sources in the sky, a stellar remnant so dense that light itself cannot escape. As they loaded Elizabeth onto the stretcher, she suddenly spoke in a clear, calm voice, but her lips didn't move. The sound came from her chest, resonating through her ribcage like she'd become a speaker. They're not demons. They've been waiting at the threshold. I opened the door by listening. I became the antenna they needed. Then she went limp at 12:17 a.m., unconscious before they finished the straps. Detective Porter called in forensics, and crime scene photographer David Reeves began documenting the room. Every photograph showed anomalies, orbs and light streaks that weren't visible to the naked eye. He switched cameras, thinking his lens was defective. Same result. Third camera, different manufacturer entirely. The artifacts persisted in every shot, as if something in that room was interacting with the sensors in ways visible light shouldn't. Blood samples from the walls came back as Elizabeth's, type AB negative confirmed. but the lab flagged the results. Unknown protein structures present, complex folded chains that suggested function but didn't match anything in medical literature. The lab tech who processed them requested the samples be sent to the CDC. They never arrived. Lost in transit, according to the paperwork. Dr. Helena Vasquez from Yale's astronomy department examined photographs of the spiral symbols and went pale. They matched ancient Sumerian astronomical charts depicting Cygnus with accuracy that shouldn't have been possible. The Sumerians didn't have the technology for this level of precision, yet here were their charts reproduced perfectly in a Connecticut bedroom by a woman who'd never studied ancient Mesopotamian astronomy. Elizabeth's research laptop told part of the story. Last accessed files from 2:47 a.m. on October 11th, all relating to FRB 121102, a repeating fast radio burst that had been puzzling astronomers for years. Most FRBs fire once and disappear forever, but this one kept broadcasting. Her browser history showed extensive time on Keim's public database, downloading signal data that anyone with an internet connection could access. Her 7 notebooks were worse. Page after page of coordinates forming 3-dimensional geometric patterns connecting stars in Cygnus, Ursa Major, and Andromeda across thousands of light-years of space. The patterns were precise, each line perfectly straight, each angle exact, and one page stood out, the handwriting suddenly controlled and deliberate. Received transmission October 10th, 2019, 11:47 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. They want entry. We are the receiver. The signal contains instructions. I followed them. More will follow. That timestamp placed her at the Very Large Array in New Mexico, conducting her research in the middle of the night. At Bristol Hospital, Dr. Patricia Jovanovich admitted Elizabeth under psychiatric hold. 20 years of experience told her this was severe psychosis, except all the medical evidence said otherwise. Brain scans showed normal structure. No tumours, no lesions, no physical trauma. Toxicology was clean. No drugs, no poisons, nothing that explained what they'd witnessed. But the hospital itself began reacting to Elizabeth's presence. Equipment in her room malfunctioned with mechanical regularity. Cardiac monitors reset every 47 seconds, requiring staff to manually restart them each time. 4 pumps stopped working entirely, forcing them to use gravity drip. The fluorescent lights pulsed in sync with the monitor resets, dimming and brightening like a heartbeat. At 3:47 a.m., Elizabeth woke screaming in that multi-voice chorus, the sound echoing through the psychiatric ward and waking patients in other rooms who began screaming themselves, infected by whatever terror lived in that sound. She began writing on the walls with her fingers dipped in saliva, moving in a way that security footage later showed was fundamentally wrong. She'd be in one position, then another, with no smooth transition between, like frames had been cut from reality itself. Everything else in the footage moved normally. Only Elizabeth existed in stuttering time. She wrote in a spiral starting from the ceiling, "The antenna is active. The signal is received. The door is open. More doors will open. We are receivers. They are patient. They have waited 6,070 years for the message to arrive." That number again. The distance to Cygnus X-1 in light years. Thomas Blanchard watched through the observation window and broke. He'd been married to this woman for 7 years. They'd met in graduate school, finished each other's sentences, shared inside jokes and dreams of growing old together. The thing in that hospital room wasn't his wife. It wore her face and used her voice, but something else looked out through her eyes. He called Father Gregory Moss at St. Dominic Church in desperation. Father Moss was 58, educated in both theology and psychology, experienced with the intersection of faith and mental illness. When he arrived at 9 a.m. on October 15th and reviewed the case, his instinct was to refuse. This was clearly medical, not spiritual. But Detective Porter showed him something that changed his mind. Body camera audio analysed by Dr. Michael Chen at UConn revealed that Elizabeth's voice contained frequencies from 80 Hz to 14,000 Hz simultaneously. Human vocal cords ranged from 85 to 255 Hz. What came from her throat was physically impossible. Worse, some frequencies matched known fast radio burst signatures. Chen's report noted harmonic similarities to FRB recordings from CHIME that he couldn't explain and frankly didn't want to. Thomas begged through tears. This engineer who built satellites and trusted in mathematics pleaded for divine intervention because science had failed him. He told Father Moss what Elizabeth said before this started. The universe is broadcasting. We built tools to listen, but we never considered that listening might tune us to receive them. They've been transmitting for millennia. I found the carrier wave. Father Moss agreed to perform a blessing, though he emphasized this didn't fit demonic possession. Demons were fallen angels, entities of spiritual evil. Whatever had Elizabeth didn't match that framework. But perhaps prayer might help, or at least provide comfort. At 2:15 p.m, Father Moss entered Elizabeth's room with Detective Porter and 2 officers present. Elizabeth sat upright in bed, eyes tracking movement with predatory precision, pupils contracting and dilating independently of each other. Father Moss began the traditional blessing, In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. Elizabeth's pupils synchronized, contracting and dilating in rhythm, every 47 seconds. Then she spoke, not to him but reciting technical data. FRB 121102, source, dwarf galaxy 3 billion light-years distant, signal originated Cygnus region, carrier wave frequency 13.7 GHz, message embedded in burst pattern, instructions decoded October 10, 2019, protocol requires biological receiver, human consciousness suitable when properly tuned. I am tuned. Others can be tuned. Dr. Jovanovic watched the EEG and felt her stomach drop. Elizabeth's brain activity was forming geometric shapes, repeating patterns that looked like code. The room temperature plummeted 5 degrees in 30 seconds. Elizabeth's eyes focused on Father Moss with sudden intensity, both pupils dilating in unison. You perform rituals for entities you've never seen based on faith. We perform rituals for entities we have detected based on evidence. Then she explained. At the Very Large Array, analysing chime data on FRB 121102, she'd found structure in the burst timings. Not random cosmic noise, but information encoded in the rhythm of the signals. Over 3 nights, she followed the instructions hidden in that rhythm. Deep meditation while listening to the bursts converted to audio frequencies, played through specialized equipment that let human ears process radio waves translated into sound. October 10th, 11:47 p.m. Mountain Time. She achieved what she called resonance. Her consciousness synchronized with the carrier frequency, and the door opened. They've been broadcasting for 6 millennia, Elizabeth said, her voice calm and terrible. The time it takes light to travel from their origin to Earth. They discovered us by detecting our radio emissions. They responded. But their response takes thousands of years to arrive. They're not invading. They're communicating. They need receivers, biological antennas. I became the first. Others will follow. The instructions are in the data. Anyone who listens properly will receive. She described entities existing between dimensions, using cosmic radiation to transmit consciousness across the universe. They wanted dialogue, witnesses, a network of receivers across the cosmos connected by these transmissions, creating a galaxy-spanning web of consciousness. Father Moss attempted the formal exorcism ritual. Elizabeth laughed with that multi-voice chorus that sounded like static shaped into mockery. Your ritual assumes I am possessed. I am not possessed. I am connected. There is a difference. You cannot exorcise a satellite link. At 3:03 p.m., exactly 47 minutes after the ritual began, Elizabeth convulsed violently, her body bending in ways that suggested joints moving beyond their designed range. Medical staff rushed in as every monitor flatlined simultaneously. Not just hers. Every piece of equipment in the room went dead. Backup generators kicked in. Emergency lights bathed everything in red, but her equipment stayed dark. For 47 seconds, only red emergency lighting. And in that crimson glow, witnesses saw blue-white light emanating from Elizabeth's eyes and mouth, so bright it left after images burned into their vision. Officer Wright's body camera, running on battery, captured footage that FBI specialists would later enhance. In the enhanced version, you could see something beneath her skin. Branching patterns like electricity moving through her nervous system, spreading from her brain down her spine through every nerve pathway, lighting her up from the inside like a circuit board. Elizabeth screamed in Latin, then ancient Sumerian, then English. "The door is open. Others will receive the call. The transmission continues." You cannot unhear what has been heard. The network grows. We are the first nodes. More will come. They are patient. They have waited 6,000 years. They can wait longer. Flatline at 3:04 p.m. CPR began immediately. 2 minutes of chest compressions and rescue breathing before her heart restarted at 3:06. She gasped, eyes opening wide. Normal eyes, brown with reactive pupils, tracking independently, confused and aware. "Tommy, what happened? Why am I in the hospital?" 5 days gone from her memory. She remembered September 15th, arriving at the VLA for her research, then nothing until waking in the hospital surrounded by doctors, priests, and police. Yale New Haven Hospital ran every test available. Brain scans normal, blood work normal. The unknown proteins from earlier samples were gone as if they'd never existed. Psychological evaluation showed no psychosis, no dissociative disorders, nothing. But she couldn't look at the night sky anymore without severe anxiety and nosebleeds. Pictures of stars, planetarium shows, anything astronomical triggered panic attacks. Radio static made her violently ill. She devoted her life to studying the cosmos, and now couldn't bear to think about it. Federal authorities confiscated her research data. Men in dark suits with NSF credentials and legal paperwork took everything. Her notes, recordings, analysis. They interviewed her for hours, but she had nothing to give them. She didn't remember. Everyone involved signed non-disclosure agreements. The case was sealed under national security, officially classified as workplace stress and sleep deprivation, causing acute psychotic break. Thomas and Elizabeth divorced 6 months later. In private conversations, Thomas admitted he couldn't explain why, but Elizabeth wasn't the same person. Something about her eyes, the way she looked at things, like she was seeing something behind reality itself. Elizabeth changed her name to Elizabeth Morrison and moved to Eugene, Oregon. She teaches high school physics now and never looks up at night. She turned her passion into her greatest fear. Thomas died in 2022. Single-car accident on Route 84 near Southington, drove off the road at high speed with no attempt to brake. Toxicology showed stress hormones consistent with months of living in constant terror. The duplex at 208 Meriden Avenue sits empty, listed below market value. Southington is small enough that everyone knows what happened there. Late at night, neighbours report those same prismatic lights and radio interference, sudden bursts of static with no identifiable source. Amateur astronomers in Hartford County have recorded something strange on 13.7 gigahertz, interference in pulses, each lasting approximately 47 seconds. They've posted recordings online, asking if anyone knows what it is. No one has answered. Detective Porter retired in 2024 and keeps a file in a locked drawer at home. 17 similar cases across the United States between 2019 and 2025. None officially connected, but the pattern is undeniable. All involved people with access to deep space monitoring equipment. All experienced lost time and spoke in multiple voices. All became obsessed with Cygnus coordinates. All wrote spiral symbols. All referenced receiving or tuning or opening doors. All resulted in psychiatric evaluation and complete memory loss. And following each case, the facility involved implemented new protocols. The VLA now prohibits solo observation shifts. All FRB data must be filtered through AI before human analysis. Chime instituted the same procedures. Porter's final note dated December 2025. We built radio telescopes to listen to the stars, to find signs of intelligent life. We never considered that they might be listening back, that the act of listening might change us, or that receiving a message might be the same as accepting a connection we can't break. Elizabeth Blanchard heard something. Now she can't unhear it. How many others have heard it too? How many more will? The data is public. Anyone can access it. Anyone can listen. And maybe that's exactly what they want. The official story is simple. Workplace stress, sleep deprivation, psychotic break. Case closed. But the evidence tells something different. The forensic samples that vanished in transit. The identical cases at research facilities nationwide. The precision of those 47-second intervals in every detail. The coordinates pointing to Cygnus X-1, a black hole we've studied for decades with our most powerful telescopes. The voice frequencies matching actual fast radio burst signatures. The VLA shut down. The new protocols at every major radio telescope worldwide. Was Elizabeth Blanchard possessed by demons? Or did she become a receiver for something far older, broadcasting across the cosmic void? Maybe the most terrifying possibility is that she was telling the truth. That somewhere in the fast radio bursts we detect daily, bursts we've catalogued since 2007, there are instructions encoded in the rhythm, and all you need to do is listen. Really listen. Let the signals synchronize. The case is closed, but the questions remain open. What did Elizabeth hear in that New Mexico desert? What did she become? How many others have received the signal? How many are listening right now at telescopes around the world, detecting mysterious bursts from billions of light years away? The data is public. Chime makes their detections available online. Anyone can access them. Anyone can listen. And according to Elizabeth, anyone who listens properly will receive. This has been Void Case Files. If this story made you think twice about what might be hiding in radio signals from deep space, subscribe and help us reach 10,000 subscribers by the end of 2026. Until next time, remember that sometimes the things we discover were waiting to be found, waiting for us to build the technology to hear them, and sometimes listening changes us forever. Stay curious, stay vigilant, and maybe don't listen too closely to the static between the stars.